We've got Rob Bogart here. I want to talk about business growth, acceleration, and specifically getting into marketing because I feel like your level of expertise is unique relative to most business owners. I think what maybe some people in your industry would consider to be like their first language, but to most business owners is not. So when we're talking about like direct mail, even like direct sales, I think you could bring a lot of value to the table. But if you don't mind, give everybody your background and your quick origin story.
Yeah. So been in the mortgage industry for the 15 years I've been in the professional workspace. I've dabbled in other things too that are always very lead driven. So I've done debt settlement, and other financial related services, but mostly mortgage.
And what strikes me about your business, because you've allowed me sort of inside your doors and I can see how the sausage is made. I have other friends in the mortgage space who are not doing business the way that you do, right? They're doing the old school, hey, I'll take you out to lunch, I'll go to your kids' birthday parties, and then hopefully when you're ready to buy a house, I will pick you will pick me because I've built the rapport over 17 years. How are you doing it differently?
That model works, but the difficulty with that model is it's not scalable. So if you want to bring in other loan officers to work for you, that process is just too long. So in the mortgage space, there's actually a marketplace for leads, which is what I would consider to be the most reliable lead source for industries that are looking to start buying leads. And then you can diversify into mail or other lead channels. But in the mortgage space specifically, there's actually a huge market for leads. So they produce. It's just simply math based. It's all about if I want to make this much money, what's the customer acquisition cost? How many leads do I have to buy? How many LOs do I have to hire? So it's actually quite simple when you do the math. It's really just familiarizing yourself with the process of how you go about maintaining the relationships for the lead vendors. But as opposed to whining and dieting or courting a client, that client very well could go somewhere else. And then there's so much value on that one client being your client that if you lose it, you're out of luck. So that's why leads are just significantly easier to deal with on a scalability aspect.
Why don't other people do it that way?
Probably intimidation. We're here in Southern California, which actually happens to be what I would consider to be one of the meccas for mortgage. So I was very fortunate to be exposed to that world and then bet on myself and just gamble and buy my own leads once I understood what it was. With anything that's new, there's always going to be a little bit of intimidation. But after somebody tries to purchase leads and see that it can work, it really only takes a week or two to understand that source of how to utilize that lead source.
Yeah, I could say that I have a similar experience of where you have to be willing to take the risk. And that sounds so cliche, but what would you say is the minimum bet you have to put on the table for, let's say, your first round of marketing? Because it's not small.
Yeah. Oh, no, 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 no. So, and that's the thing is like if you do want to diversify lead sources, every lead source will have different metrics. So I do utilize individuals that understand how to take the data that I acquire and then help me interpret it to where I should spend that money. But when you're looking at mortgage specifically, with you investing in yourself, I mean, you're probably going to be looking at least a $10,000 to $15,000 investment for you yourself as an originator. And for those that don't know, you can originate on your own and you can hire those to do that. But that's probably the math you're going to have to look at for each individual seat that you have.
How many rounds did it take you to execute before you became, let's say, successful or you got a positive ROI on your spend?
I really didn't have a choice because I got to the point to where I just couldn't do it for other people. I felt like there was just too much inefficiency and I'm like, I can do this better. And I probably started a bit sooner than I should have. It was really a sink or swim. So I had no choice. I within the first week, I think the mortgage space, it was able to make it work.
So walk me through it. So you, and because I think this will work for a lot of businesses out there, not just mortgage specific. So walk me through it from A to Z.
Okay. If you were to look at someone that inquired online, and let's just say it's industry agnostic, there's a few things that I know that lead is very interested because they went online, they have intent, and they're looking for a product. So anytime I purchase a lead that was submitted online, I go into that thinking this person had enough of a desire to want to go online to look into this. So I always try to make sure I remember that in speaking with them. And then with other lead sources, there are some that can be a little bit pricier where they're calling you. So as opposed to you reaching out to them, they're reaching out to you. And when someone reaches out to you, you treat that lead source a little bit different as well.
Mm.
So I just always ask them if they need help. I offer I tell them what I can do to help. And then tell them I offer, see if it can, be beneficial for them.
See, that's really fascinating because I think oftentimes in conversation we can skip over those little nuances. Let's zoom in on that. The fact that they have intent is an enormous game changer.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I've spent a lot of time in business trying to convince people to have intent.
Mm-hmm.
You could spend years doing that versus just working with the people who've already decided that they want the thing.
Yeah.
Now they just need a vendor to help them execute on that desire.
So that really is a interesting dynamic because there are a lot of people who have mild intent but have an absolutely massive need. And you have to bridge that gap because they're only mildly interested, they do have intent, but their need for what you offer is massive.
Mm.
So there's a salesmanship involved as well. But I do think the best way in working any lead is letting them talk, understand their situation, ask them what they need, and see how you can bridge that gap.
Yeah, you're helping me build this model. So it's like some sort of, some sort of quadrants or XY axis of need and intent and where that sweet spot is.
Correct.
Because I think you're spot on. I think if you don't get that right, then you do become the person who chases after business for 4 years. You've probably experienced this. You chase after business for 3-4 years, and then the person decides not to go with you.
Oh, yeah. That happens all the time. If you don't have enough at bats at the plate, you are never going to be successful. So there are people that can work on a referral basis, and that's great. I'm not saying don't do that. I really think diversification of lead source is key. But I do think with anything, you have to make sure you have something that can benefit the client. You have to make sure the client actually needs what you're offering, because that's unfortunately a case where people are pushed product that they don't need for the sake of the business profitizing from it. But with these leads, if you can find the opportunity to help them, then it's a great way to basically have the company make money and then also suit the needs of the clients.
Yeah, what comes to mind is I was taught a long time ago, like the buyer's bell curve.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I forget what they say, but traditionally it's 3% of the market is ready to buy right now. And then you have like another standard deviation prior to that, which is they are going to be ready in the next 2-3 months, 2-3 months. So it's obviously a longer marketing cycle. And then there's a certain percentage that if you nurture for a long time, I think the tricky part about that is referral-based business, word-of-mouth-based business, yes, is dramatically cheaper. And that's why I think it can become really seductive, right? Hey, that doesn't cost you anything versus you're paying, $500 or $5,000 per lead. But that's not the full equation. It's a velocity discussion. How quickly can I acquire the customers for what price?
Absolutely. And I think another part of it is every industry, if you do enough research, it's out there. You can find out what it costs to acquire a client from a lead. And there's different lead sources. So obviously I know mortgage, but I'm a big believer in leads. I feel like even the leads that haven't necessarily worked out well, it's not that I took a huge bath on it. Maybe it broke even, maybe it wasn't as profitable. And it's like, okay, if I have this lead source or I have this lead source is more profitable. So I'm going to divert all of my marketing dollar to this lead source. And it, at least in the industry that I'm in, it's cyclical. So sometimes if it's a tougher market, I'll invest more in this lead source. And if things change and now the market's more conducive, then I'll switch to this lead source. So it really there's many factors that go into it, but the bottom line is you got to start. That's That's just what it comes down to. If you don't participate, you'll never learn and you'll never be able to find that success.
So online or physical mail, what works better?
So there's pros and cons to both. It's really not as black and white as like one or another. A blend is the best. Personally, from like an entry level loan officer perspective, I do think mail is more captive because there's no competition. That lead is exclusively your lead. Now, if mail was cheaper because it can be a lot pricier to do mail, then more people would do it. The other problem with mail is you cannot predict it the way you can with online leads.
Hmm.
So when you're mailing, if there's a point in time where you get 50 leads in an hour and then no leads for 2 hours, you're going to have to find a way to manage that. So it's more costly and it's more unpredictable, but the lead is more captive. With online leads, it's significantly more scalable. You can turn it on and off like a faucet. The math is a lot more predictable. It's also a lot more published, but it's a significantly more competitive lead source. So you're dealing with the monsters in the industry and you're dealing with the mom and pops in the industry because everybody understands if they've ever tried online leads, they will pan out. But you're clawing, you're scratching, there's a lot of competition in that arena. So that's why the blend is really best to have the opportunity to get those exclusive leads and then to be able to utilize online leads to actually get the at bats.
How So I've seen you in action, and I'm not just saying this because you're in that seat. You're one of the best salespeople I've ever seen on the phone, for sure. How have you found it to be a difficult learning process for those under you to be able to sell something so quickly? Because I've noticed, like, you can put a salesperson on something and you get one guy who's a killer, and he's a one call close or a two call close. You give that same script to another person, and all of a sudden you're 10 calls in and they still don't have an end in mind, or an end in sight. What's your comment on that?
I've actually put a lot of thought into
Yeah.
this, having hired new loan officers, experienced loan officers. And honestly, I think personally, anyone can be successful in sales as long as they have a proper background in what they stand for. So I am a big believer in honesty sells. I think if you follow a script and you're truthful and people understand that your intention is to help them and money is a byproduct of that versus your main goal being to make money, people pick up on that. And you follow a script and you have, be honest, like if someone says, how long have you been in the industry? And you say, you know what, I'm actually new to the game, but I'm trying really hard. I think people respond to that. I think everyone has their own unique advantages where they are in their sales journey. And I think just owning it is the best bet. But if you really do truly want that client to succeed, then I think you'll make money. I think you'll be a great salesperson. I think if you have some structure and way of a script, I think that anybody can succeed. I really do.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on a very common topic, and I think you and I are on the same page on this. I do not agree with fake it till you make it. Let's say, like, generally speaking, I just don't think you have to. I think you build way more rapport and points with somebody if you say, hey, you know what? I'm new. I'm not good at this, but I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
If I don't know the answer, though, I'm going to try to get it for you.
Yeah.
I'd rather somebody tell me that than pretend, because A-plus players can see through the BS 100% every single time.
Oh yeah. And the other thing is I there's like a human component to it. Like sometimes you're just gonna bond with some people and sometimes you won't. And there are other times where I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm just repeatable. I do the same thing every single time because then that way if I ever find myself in a slump or something's not going right, I can like literally go back on the calls and be like, what am I doing? I have my own structure. So I like to be repeatable. But the thing is, I mean, more often than not, if someone gives me the time, we'll do the deal. And it's just because I'm being genuine. The other thing is you can't even necessarily judge the rapport as a means of how well the call is going. Cause I've had conversations where it feels like I'm pulling teeth with people, but they're like, yeah, let's go. So I think the fake it till you make it isn't the best answer. I feel like transparency is the best answer, but I do feel like if you can be confident in knowing that you're good at sticking to the script, you're good at being honest, and that confidence comes through the phone, people will absolutely utilize it.
I've noticed with certain salespeople, there's a self-worth bug in their brain, and they are avoiding the ask. So they'll just spend weeks like just kind of dancing around it, changing from different topics. Have you noticed the same pattern?
100%. And then the way in which that I navigate that is for everybody following our script, there is a particular point where we ask for the business. And if someone doesn't ask for the business and I listen to the call, the first thing I tell them to do is ask for the business. So in the case of mortgage, it's a credit card for an appraisal, and it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. So what we'll do is we work into that ask into the script to where it feels more native. So we have a disclosure we quickly read. They'll preface the appraisal before they read the disclosure. Then it comes time for the appraisal and they'll ask, okay, which credit card are we going to use for the appraisal? And if you worked into the script, you'd be surprised how many people will be like, we'll use a Visa. And if they didn't ask for the business, no one's going to be like, hey, can I give you my credit card? So I do think you're right. People are afraid to ask for that business. And then the reality is like, that's like taking the shot in basketball. It's super cliche, but you miss all the shots you don't take.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I go into a company and if I feel like I'm not being led on the right journey, like when a company says like, "Hey, what a version of like, what do you want to do?" It's like, "What do I want to do? I'm here. I'm like, I paid
Yeah.
you money,
Yeah.
so you can tell me what to
Yeah.
do, and by the way, when to do it by, and I expect to be done in a reasonable time frame." If I sense hesitation, that makes me question your services.
For sure. I that's the part where the confidence, like not fake it till you make it, don't lie, but also go into it letting them understand that you are the leader, you're going to take control and you're going to make sure the job gets done. And then when you ask for the business, it just feels significantly more natural for everybody involved because there are times I've seen people ask for the business just so uh, out of the blue
Yeah,
that I'll hear on the conversation. I'm like, ooh, both people are
yeah.
definitely uncomfortable with it. And I think most people, whenever they're selling, until it becomes second nature, they're having their own internal dialogue and they're doubting themselves. And like people like, you have to pitch a perfect game. I got to be super charismatic. And none of that's really true. It's just basically having the confidence and knowing that you're going to get it done. And if you don't have confidence in yourself, then it's really important you have confidence in the organization, in your manager, in executives, like whatever it takes to make sure you can manifest that confidence until you build it yourself. But I do think everyone, I don't care if you're an introvert or an extrovert, charismatic or not, you can sell.
I completely agree. I think there was a common phrase that I think has turned a lot of people off to sales, which is something along the lines of like you salespeople are not hired, they are born, or something like that. Or salespeople are not
Yes.
trained, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just think that's not true. I think that turns off a lot of people. I do think it's still technically accurate of if you own a company and you hire somebody who's not really good at sales, it's probably going to take you a couple years to build them up. So therefore, the value equation just says, well, I'm not going to hire that person. I'd rather hire what appears to be a naturally
Mm-hmm.
good salesperson. But that person who's not air quotes naturally good, they could invest in themselves to do the work, and they could come back a couple years later when they're ready, if that makes sense.
It does. And like, I'll ask you a question because this is definitely something that I've always considered. I've always thought a salesperson was charismatic, outgoing.
Mm.
Everybody liked them. But sometimes I'm like, you know what? Now I feel like sales is more of a process than a person. So, in my opinion, if you have a script, you can be a good salesman because salesmanship isn't about personality. It's about discipline, it's about adherence, and it's about competence. So, I mean, I'm interested to think what your take is on that.
Well, I think first of all, I think you're spot on. I think for some reason society's narrative is, oh, it's Johnny Charismatic is the good sales guy. I've actually found the opposite. Johnny Charismatic is actually not good most times at executing a full transaction. He might be good because he likes going out to the bar, he likes doing happy hours, all this stuff. But then it's like, hey, Johnny, where like you're not following the script, you're not following the process. You're all over the place, dude. You show up at 11 a.m. when you should be here at 8:30. What's going on?
Yeah.
Right? So his barrier is actually completing and sticking to a process versus the introvert, like the scientist barrier is, okay, how do I talk to people? But dude, when you get that right as a scientist, you're unstoppable.
Oh yeah.
Like
Effort and
absolutely
execution.
unstoppable.
Effort and execution. Like, and it's interesting because I feel like it's just, we're bred to think everyone's got to be this superstar, gregarious
Mhm.
personality to be good at sales. And in reality is I actually think there's a lot of people that are intimidated by that person. And if I had to choose, if you were to say, hey, like make me the perfect salesperson, I think the number one trait that I would look for would be effort. If like the effort and the desire are there, I don't think it's possible to fail if you're working for the right organization. So, you find yourself in a place that isn't going to empower you, then that's not even necessarily your fault. But let's just say you have the platform, effort, in my opinion, is number one. And then adherence and execution is probably number two. Like
Mhm.
work hard, follow the playbook that we know is right, and you will make money and you'll be successful.
I'm going to say something that might sound controversial. I think some of the best salespeople are doctors
Doctors.
because we don't even consider, right? Like, okay, you go into your office or you go into the appointment. They tell you with certainty, you have this.
Mhm.
You got three options. Here they are. And then he leaves. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there's no back and forth. And the nurse comes in, like takes some notes, like, hey, which one do you want? You want prescription A, B, or C,
Yeah.
or none at all? And he just gets out of there. There's no back and forth. Do you know what I mean? It's like you baked into it is the hierarchy. He's at the pinnacle.
That's the thing. Do you think that there's an appeal to credibility? Because
100%.
yeah,
100%. Which I think gets into the frame. So, what frame is the prospect walking into? Where are they viewing you as the guide in that journey? At the top of the hierarchy or at the bottom? Are you a servant or are you a leader guide? I think that's very important to establish as quickly as possible.
and I feel like that should be something that's worked into the script for sure.
100%.
Yeah. And here's the thing. You're definitely talking about maximizing sales. I feel like if someone doesn't have that skill set yet or that credibility yet or even that experience yet, that what you would explain in my opinion will absolutely help you propel yourself to the top, but it isn't required to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, especially going on that matrix that you kind of were illustrating earlier of where like if we think about what the need is and what the time horizon is and the desire, if you get like a few of those right, it's almost the job of the salesperson just to get out of the way.
Yeah,
Right? I'm an order taker. I don't have to like guide you off of any side quests. It's just like just tell me exactly what you want.
yeah. Well, and like again, I this is something that I think about a lot, and it's cool to do things like this because then you get to bounce off ideas. But I have noticed if I spend a lot of time, so like in the script building, I think a quick appeal to your credibility is going to be huge. Have them trust you. I think that also just comes to speaking with confidence. And like I said, if you don't have confidence yourself, have confidence in the process, your organization. But then
Mm.
secondly, I think it's really important to ask good questions and then honestly let them tell you exactly what they need so you are aware of their situation. And the more they talk, the more likely it is they're going to feel comfortable and want to work with you.
So is that the classic, hey, you ask them a list of inventory questions, they tell you, and then you basically just, okay, out of the 15 things that we've asked you, you need these four. So you just repeat back the four and like, hey, yeah, we can do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes, there's definitely the psychology of that. And I also feel like not only that, it's helping you get to the point of what you need to know to do a better job. So like on any phone call, I try to have there be a starting point and an end point, and I try to have that be a certain period of time because with leads when they're repetitive like that and I can hang up the phone and I can get another phone call, now time is a
Mm.
resource. So if you're starting at point A and you want to end at point B, there's little places in between that I try to meet these little toll gates to make sure I'm staying on path. And one of them is to understand what they're doing. But if there's too much rapport building and you're all over the place and you're not really understanding what they need, then that call gets stretched and now there's one less call you can take today. And if you know 3% of calls are going to close, well, you definitely have to build rapport, but also value your own time because your time is a resource and that accomplishes both. So understanding what they need and how you can address the call and also building the rapport, letting them kind of sell themselves and reiterating what they want so you can understand that they're feeling heard.
Yeah, I think that's outstanding. Is that a real number, by the way? 3%?
That is actually a real number
Okay.
for one of the lead sources in which that we use. Correct.
So what would you say is a good Like, what's a good range? 3% to 7%? What is a good range?
So let's with mail, because that's a more captive audience, I would give that a 20% close rate.
Wow.
Yeah. Now remember though, that is a very, very pricey bill for any marketing that you have to do with mail. It's going to require a lot of cash and requires a lot of cash up front. It's not pay as you go, it's pay up front and see what happens. Then you have to have the coverage because if all the calls come in at once and you can't take those calls, that is just lost money. So it requires labor and it requires upfront cost. So 20%, you need it to be that high, otherwise you're not going to be able to make it. Now with lead ag, which in the layman's terms is someone that goes online, fills out a form, that is probably around a 2 to 3% conversion. Now those leads you pay as you go, and the math still pencils out. So we're always trying to shoot for a 5x return on ad spend. And that's normally about what we see with lead ag. With mail, you can look at like a 7 to 10x return. So it really comes down to budget. And then honestly, it comes down to how many bodies you have on the floor. Now, lead ag you can do as a solo operator as well. So like I think that people, they're like, oh, it's just me. I'm a one-man band. I don't want to invest in leads. And that mindset is the worst mindset you can have because it doesn't matter. There are options for you even as a solo operator.
So you're saying shooting for 5x return on ad spend for mail?
Mail is about 7 to 10x. Lead ag
Okay.
is about 5x.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fascinating. Because yeah, man, it's so interesting for almost all business owners that I interact with. While they are successful and let's say, they've built up their personal wealth, very often they have not cracked the most efficient top of the funnel mechanisms. It's normally, hey, I've been working in this business for 30 years. I started out, taking them out to golf trips and happy hours and all these things. I nurtured it for 5 years. And hey, Wes, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Right. And then I started thinking, like, there's got to be a better way. Like this assumed duration of courtship, it can't be multiple years. Because then I start like reflecting. It's like, well, the services that I use, I don't want to have another friend. I don't want it. Right. I recently, I'll put this in perspective. I recently got something. I got a suit made, and this guy's great, but he's one of the Johnny Charismatic guys.
Okay.
And we're just having all these side conversations that, to be quite frank, I don't want to have, and I don't have the time to have them.
Mm-hmm.
I want an engineer on the other side saying, hey, here's your universe of options. You've told me what you want. Boom. We're gonna alleviate these. We don't have to talk about them because it's a waste of time. Great. Here's a synthesized list, and boom, 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 boom. Great. We got it. Now you're done.
And there's a lot of things you bring up on that. Like you could write a book on sales. Obviously people have, but I do think that you brought up a very good point is you need to understand who the other person on the line is because there's going to be different characters that all fit kind of into the same template. And when I was kind of alluding to, like, I work well with engineers, but those calls are stiff. They're rigid. I feel uncomfortable, but I know what they need. And it's just get to the point. You don't got to talk about the weather. You don't have to discuss what their summer plans are. You don't have to do that. So it really is knowing the person on the other end of the phone too, or the other client. So that's an important thing that everyone will eventually pick up with time.
How do you fish that out?
So that does come with time. I know that there are general guidelines people will use. I feel like every human being, no matter whether it's sales or just living life, falls under a certain personality template. And I can kind of identify which template that person is. Like if I ask someone how they're doing and then they give me a lot in return, I'm like, okay, we're going to be friends. And if I ask someone how they're doing and they say fine, okay, I'm gonna give this person a little bit more time to warm up. And if they don't warm up, then I'm gonna try to investigate to see like what do you do for work? Like what do you things to that effect. Oh, I'm an engineer. Okay, straight to the point. Oh, I'm a doctor. Or I don't have much time. Things like that effect. I get it. We're gonna expedite the process. I'm gonna get you the numbers. I'm just gonna shoot you straight. I'm gonna let you know what I have. We're gonna work together. We're not gonna work together.
Mm.
So that's just how it goes. And then there are people where it's like they want a friend in the process, and I'll be their friend. But those people actually are trickier in a different way because they will take your time.
Yes.
So it's like it's an interesting dynamic. That's why I love sales. It's always a little different every day.
So walk me through if I had to build a flow chart of your sales process, what does that look like? So we've got either lead ag, so online, or we have mail. And then in both of those situations, that potential customer is calling you or you're calling them. So lead ag, you're probably calling them.
Lead ag, I'm calling them.
Okay, got it.
And that's through uh I don't want to turn anybody off to trying lead ag because you can do it as simple as you get an email. I will dial them on my cell phone. I have it a bit more systemized to where it's done through a dialer. There's drip campaigns with text and email. Um, Access to that technology is readily available. Like another reason people don't get into lead ag is because they don't want they want to be perfect. They want their systems to be correct. They want all of their processes to be flawless. And the reality is, don't let very good get in the way of perfect, or don't let perfect get in the way of very good. Excuse me.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then with those are the two: inbound for mail, outbound for lead ag.
And then the phone call, I'd imagine, is it very different than the inbound? So outbound versus inbound calls.
Totally different calls.
Okay.
Totally different calls.
So walk me through that if you don't mind. So what's the outbound call like?
The outbound call is really a lot more about trying to get another minute, another minute, another minute. So a lot of times they'll say, I have 2 minutes to talk. So it's very incremental and you're trying to get pieces of information as you can. And your goal is to keep them on the phone. And the longer they're on the phone, the more likely you are to close. With inbound calls, it's a lot more customer service oriented. The pace is slower. They are responding to something, and that response rate is like 1.5%. So when you send out 100 mailers, you might get one call out of that. So you treat that call with the utmost respect. Like a mail call, if you see two phone calls coming in, you take the mail call every time. But it's a slower cadence, a lot more questions. A lot of times they'll have more questions for you. So a lot of times it's answering their questions as opposed to you asking questions. But the goal is still the same. You want to start at point A and you want to end at point B. So there are a lot of similarities because it's the mortgage industry. You're taking a loan app, you're asking what their goals are, you're trying to understand how to best help them. A lot of times people don't even really know what they need. So that's another thing is you have to make sure when you're discussing with them that you present options that they might not think that they necessarily want or need. And if they don't decide to do what your suggestion is, that's something you also have to be aware of is don't talk them out of something that's better than what they have, but wouldn't be what you would do.
Got it. So where did those two parallels converge? Is it on the education process once you build up enough rapport with the outbound? Where do they meet in the middle? Like where does it become the same?
So mortgage is very specific. We use an application. The application is kind of like the backbone of any potential loan opportunity. So when you start to gather information about their goals, that's really kind of where you go down the same path. Once you understand what their goals are, now it's understanding their current loan situation, which is the same for both lead types, understanding their income, understanding their credit. So once you establish their goals and you get into the loan application, that's where they kind of converge. They're really only different in the beginning of the phone call.
And what do you do? What's the secret sauce to try to get somebody where it's an outbound? They're a little more skeptical. You're trying to sell the next minute. Where's that fork in the road where you know, okay, now I've got this person. Now we can get to the goal stage.
It's interesting because I think that wall comes down pretty quick. With lead ag, you're probably not the first person to call them. They've probably talked to other people. If you can get past the first couple minutes and they really aren't busy, like sometimes you'll hear someone in the supermarket and you understand, okay, there's only so much we can really do right now. Most of the time, that's like a deflection. They just don't want to talk to you. After like 2 minutes, honestly, if they're invested in the process, you can get them to stay on the phone.
Got it. Yeah, because what I'm seeing with both of these still, the stuff behind the stuff is they both had intent,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because one is clicking on some sort of online advertisement, and the other one is calling you. They've just taken that extra step to call.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I think that's so important for listeners to hear, because if you're only playing in the pool of people who've already raised their hand and said, I'm interested, this sounds obvious when we say it out loud, but the amount of business owners that are playing in the I'm not sure if they're interested pool is insane.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And the thing is, the consumer will convince you they're not interested. And then I always tell the agents, I'm like, hey, don't let them sell you. The reality is nobody fills out their personal information unless there's some interest. And that is probably my biggest pet peeve, is when people complain about leads because they don't respect the leads. They don't buy the leads. If this is more coming from an employee aspect versus the marketers or the company owners buying the leads, they don't understand. And they're looking for low hanging fruit. But the reality is nobody enters their information online unless there's some sort of curiosity. And there comes a point in that phone call, and it's really normally in the beginning, who's going to sell who. And I always tell everybody, if you get a call and someone is talking to you, do not let them convince you they're not interested. They might not have the time to talk right then and there, and they might not need your service, but there's absolute truth in the fact that they have some sort of curiosity or intent, because they wouldn't enter their personal information otherwise.
What is the tone that you have and or philosophy? Is it, hey, here's what I have to offer, here's the education behind it? Is it take it or leave it? Because at the end of the day, you're saying it's a 3% success rate with online calls. It's a 20% success rate for mail. So how do you know when the non-buyers, when you decide, okay, that's not for us, we're going to move on to the next call?
Yeah. There's a lot of nuance in the mortgage space because a lot of clients just simply don't qualify. They would love to do business with you, but they just aren't going to qualify. So with those, you try to get to that as quickly as you possibly can. You find out, can I even help you? Can I not help you? I go into every single call the same way, assuming that they qualify. And my personal take on how to sell someone is let them know, hey, I'm here to help. I'm here to make sure if you do need something, we don't overlook it. I'll leave no stone unturned. I'm not going to force you into a corner. I'm here to help if you want it. And ultimately, it's your decision. But if you do want to get it done, I will get it done. So I don't want anybody to feel as if I'm twisting their arm. You can do that, and you can be that hammer. But in my opinion, not only does it not make for the best situation for you, because it's a longevity game. You got to go into work every day feeling up to the task, and pressuring people, to me personally, makes me feel a little bit more uncomfortable with the entire process from start to finish. Are they committed? Are they not committed? Am I working for free until that loan funds? If somebody feels like they want to work with me because that's their decision, I have had a significantly better experience. And I really, really do believe honesty sells. So I think that people pick up on that, and I don't really ever have to worry about competition or a lot of people in mortgage will complain about competition. I don't even address competition. I just assume they're talking to me and only me. I don't address competitors. If they have a question about pricing, then I'll let them know the truth. I'll let them know, hey, we work like real estate agents. This is what we earn per file. That is 100% in the open. I'm willing to share that with you. And if it doesn't work for you, that's totally okay. And if you want to part ways as friends, I'm here to help in any capacity. And people will come back after having gotten busy, going to their competitor, whatever it is, they will remember you.
Man, I love that. So I love the price objection and the way you counter it, which is, yep, that's the price. If that's not okay with you, totally okay. Yeah. Like that vibe. I love that totally okay vibe. Totally okay. What you're not doing is saying, oh my gosh, you asked about my price. Pretty please still do business with me. I'll discount it by 10%, 20%, whatever it takes. And then you have a race to the bottom.
Yeah. Well, and there are going to be price point shoppers. And like anything in life, I understand things are negotiable. Mortgage is a little bit of a lower margin product. And I guess that's relative to other financial services, maybe not to other products. So if somebody is hell bent on price, I'll see what I can do. But if it's just not going to work out, it's not going to work out. There's no hard feelings. And I know that if I can let that person know I'm always here. If you are going to look for the low cost leader, you probably will find someone a little cheaper, but you're not going to necessarily get the service. And maybe you will, I don't know. But is it worth spending 5 days to try to find $1,500 off on a 30-year term when you have a $700,000 loan? You tell me. Like, is your time worth that? And like, by the way, since you were trying to find a lower rate, the market's moved.
Oh yeah, that was going to be my next question. How do you appeal to like, or do you use any analogies or examples to get them over that hump?
Um, I do analogies, not necessarily, but there are some people where if they're really hell bent on price, I'll tell them, well, what's your time worth? Like if you're gonna mortgage, we fish from the same pond in mortgage. Like I always tell people, I can't beat two types of financing. I can't beat fantasy financing when someone's lying to you, and I can't beat family financing when your dad's giving you a 0%. So if you're gonna go either of those two routes, let's just end the call and move on. Because if you do find someone that's going to beat me, it's not going to be by more than $1,500. You know, maybe certain circumstances, certain loan types, you can find something for $3,000 cheaper. But how much is your time worth if you're going to spend 4 days taking applications and running your credit? And then how confident are you that the market's not going to move? Because it could very well change on you in a day.
I absolutely love it. I love, and I'm writing that down. I can't beat family financing and I can't beat fantasy financing. There is tremendous power in being fully transparent and showing certain cards and you being the teacher along the process. So just like, hey, time out real quick. If you're going to have these couple options, I can't beat those,
Yeah.
just to be fully candid. But then also what that does is it builds trust.
Mhm.
Like, hey, he's telling me up front, right? These things are not going to work for him. Therefore, we should end it now. We part as friends. I think that's outstanding.
Well, I also feel like people place so much value on the client because they're the ones that drive the profit and the revenue, which I can appreciate. But you also have to value yourself to a degree. And if you're just constantly devaluing yourself, people pick up on that. And then all of a sudden they're no longer interested in working with you, even if you are the low cost leader, because it's just you don't have that authoritative figure. You don't have that presence that I feel like a lot of people want when they're doing a transaction with their home loan. So for what you do, this is their nest egg. For what I do, this is their home. This isn't like buying a tube of toothpaste at the store.
Yeah.
So I do think that there is value in standing ground and just making sure that they're aware of the fact like this is just what it is. I'll tell you right now, this is what I earn. If you think that's too much, that's fine. If you think someone can do it for cheaper, that's fine. It's important to make sure that they're aware of the fact that you will get the job done. And at what point is making sure you're securing a home loan or your nest egg more important than $1,000?
Do you ever tell it from another party's perspective? Because I have found that to be successful on our side. Like, first thing I tell them is like, hey, we're not going to be the highest price shop in town. We're not going to be the lowest, right? What we have found is like, typically if there's a race to the bottom, there's a reason why.
Yeah.
There's a qualitative portion that you're probably not being told up front and you will find out 10 steps into the process. Additionally, and then this is where I'll use another party's example, and I'll usually up level the status of that individual. Like I'll kind of cherry pick a client who's super successful, super smart. Let's say one client works in aerospace, so he's very methodical, right, in his decision making. And I'll say, hey, the reason that he said he came to us is for X, Y, and Z reason. It's not that he's not smart enough. It's like, here's why he chose to make that decision. And I found that actually increases conversions a lot.
Yeah, honestly, that's something that I really should do because I feel like, to be frank, this is probably an area of weakness that I have. I just try to avoid it personally. I just try to have it to be like, I don't like to mention competition at all, but that is interesting to basically say from someone's perspective that has worked with you what they liked about you.
Mm-hmm.
That is an effective method.
Yeah, because you and I, we're super close friends. We talk a lot about psychology. If you look at the psychology of it, human beings make decisions off of shortcuts. It would not be possible to get through life otherwise. So we're constantly looking to who to ping off of to make those shortcut decisions. So if you pick somebody at the top of the status hierarchy, particularly one who's going to be more methodical, it's like, okay, I trust in that guy that he's done his homework. And then telling them the reason why, like giving them a summary reason as to why, they're like, okay, yeah, well, if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Let's move forward.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the way that I met you was from someone who I have respect for with their decision-making process. So when they had mentioned, hey, I no longer mess around with my wealth, I have this guy do it. And when I called him asking about, hey, we should join up to get our stock group going again, he said, go to Wes. That's exactly what I did. And now when I give people advice, a lot of the advice I get is from you. And then like they know, and I've told them some of the things that I've learned from you. So now that that they are aware of that I am taking advice from people that are worth giving advice. And
Yeah.
that's not to say anyone's advice is useless, but I would say one thing for sure, take advice from people that are in positions that you want to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I've noticed that when I also include that other line, we're not going to be the highest and we're not going to be the lowest. If I had to reverse engineer as to why that works, I think it's just a relatable thing. And then when I put on the other piece of like, oh, because what we have found is the lowest cost providers tend to work out how your other low cost providers work in your life, right? When you buy clothes at Walmart, they tend to get holes in them pretty quick. And people can relate to that. You're like, yeah, you're right. And if we can just overcome that pretty quickly, we move on.
That's brilliant because there are points in time where you'll never be the low cost leader just simply because of the fact somebody will work for free. And the reality is you are 100% spot on. Those discount lenders, there's a reason.
Yeah.
You call, you don't get a call back. You're waiting a week to get an answer. You email, no one talks back to you. Like the loan's supposed to close in 30 days, but it takes 60. And the reality is for $1,500, and by the time the process is over, now that $1,500, there's an extension, and now they're $2,000 more expensive than they'd say they would be.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an absolute fact. Those discount lenders, in my opinion, are the Walmart t-shirt.
Yeah.
It's just because it's such a transactional situation for mortgage in comparison for what you do. I still would prefer not have price be brought up. I feel like that's always going to be my success, is just having them trust me, not worry about price. But if it is, that's a great thing to mention.
Yeah, because I'm curious, especially in something like mortgage where like the markets change. And if I were in there, I wonder if I would say something like we just said. Plus, it's like, hey, when you're with us, the reason we're not the low cost providers is because you're paying for speed. And if we don't execute transactions in a reasonable period of time, then the market could change. And that market could change in a direction that you do not want it to change. So you're looking at this price over here, but the cost to you potentially is exponential. And then I'd reference a period of time. It's like, hey, because they're probably aware, oh, well, remember when interest rates were at 2% and now they're at 7%?
Yeah.
Do you know how much more that costs those people who were on the fence and dabbling with like these amateurs?
And I mean, and you brought this to light because you encouraged me to even look into what you do. And like, I was actually proud of you because just so everybody knows, you actually got into the mortgage side for a little bit and found success. And in my opinion, within a week, you took the test and closed 2 deals and were able to see how it works. On the reverse side, you encouraged me. And I also feel like, unfortunately, a lot of those discount lenders, there's a strong correlation to being associated as bad actors.
Yeah.
So it's like those are the ones that cause your industry and my industry to feel dishonest because you're working with those individuals who aren't locking the loans or are telling you one thing, but their commissions are baked in another way. And like there's also a certain level, I hate to say this, of deception that can occur. So that's just why I feel like honesty sells all the way around, because hey, there might be someone who's ethically cheaper by a little bit, but honestly, a lot of those ethically cheaper individuals, you're getting the Walmart brand or the bad actors, to where after having spent 60 days in this process and you're at the finish line and the pricing's all different, you're so committed because you've been through hell and back that now you're just going to do it no matter what.
Yeah, completely agree. What I tell a lot of people that we work with is I say, hey, done beats cheap.
That's a good point.
Man, I like, actually somebody that you and I know very closely, I was having a conversation with her and we were talking about something where she loves doing it. It was like she loves going swimming. Mm-hmm. And this was during COVID time. And I told her swimming is like her hobby, right? And it's how she gets her source of enjoyment and her source of exercise. And she's like, yeah, but the gym's closed down and I don't know when it's going to open. I said, oh, well, this gym over here is open. And she's like, oh, that gym costs $150 a month. She's like, versus my gym over here costs 10 cents a day or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay. But right now you're paying for something and you're not getting the result. So how much are you willing to pay for a non-result? So over here, sure, you're going to pay $150 a month, but it's not done, right? The product is not being given to you. And it sounds so obvious when we're articulating it this way, but it's not common practice.
And it brings up another good point, honestly. If there's someone that is just simply not going to understand what you're trying to tell them, you have to walk away. And I think there has been points in my life where I've been insecure in my sales skills, where I'm clinging to that client.
Yeah.
And then there's been points where I've been like overly confident, where I'm like, no, I'm going to get you because I want you to understand that I'm going to be able to turn you. And the reality is sometimes I think the best client is the client that you turn away to get onto the next client that wants to work with you and has similar types. And that's why leads are great, because if you have a bad call, you can hang up and take another one. Or if you've been courting someone for 3 months and all of a sudden in the mortgage space, let's say you're courting someone to buy a house and they find a real estate agent, and that real estate agent has a best friend that co-markets for them and now turns them this direction. You just had someone, straight eat off your plate when you've been setting the table the entire time. So when you do lose that client, it hurts. In the ag space, if there's a client you just don't see eye to eye with, it's not no problem. No skin off your back. You can part ways as friends. And that's what's great about leads, is there's just so much opportunity.
Yeah, I would actually want to call out the morality of the standard way of doing business. The way that I view it, and maybe I'm being, exaggerating too much here, but this is honestly how I feel about it. If you pretend to be my friend, if you're coming to my birthday parties and or calling me on occasion because I'm in your CRM, right? And you want to give the illusion of friendship when we're not really friends, just because your ninja move is hoping that I do business with you in the future. When I find that out, I will not like you. I will not do business with you, and I will no longer be your friend.
Yeah, I agree. And I tell this to a lot of people. I find the inverse to be true. If someone's my friend, I care less if they do business with me, because I truly want them to do what's in their best interest, because I care about them. So like, it's really no skin off my back. Like, and I'll tell everybody, it does not hurt my feelings. And I'll even help for free if you're a friend, because that's what friends do. But I don't feel as if someone's my friend that they're obligated to do business with me. And and that's the thing with anything referral based, is there's this sense of obligation.
Yep.
And I feel like that creates a certain level of tension. And even if someone is referred to me, I feel the obligation that they have to use me. And I don't want that to be the case. I want them to use me because they feel like they're going to get the best job, not because they're forced to.
Yeah, I agree with you. I hate saying this out loud. I think it's mostly true for me. I actually probably want to do business less with my friends.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Because then there's also a lot of tension if things don't go 100% as planned. And in both of our industries, there's so many variables that are outsourced, especially in mortgage, to other vendors that I can't control. But you are the face. So if a friend gets upset with me and I drop the ball, okay, I can deal with that. But I'm a reflection of every other vendor. And the reality is there's just so many variables. Most of the time things work out. But if it's a friend and things don't go right, it can get, unfortunately, that mixture of pleasure and business, it's a real thing. It can cause tension even after the transaction is closed, in my case, or it's an ongoing relationship with you. It can tarnish the friendship potentially.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, there's so much more on the line that you could be distracted by. So I'd imagine doctors probably don't want to operate on their friends, right? Or their family, right?
Just too much on the line.
Yeah, there's this extra narrative going on in the subconscious. But to your point, unless you really crack the top of the funnel, you almost have to go that direction. Like, you have to go word of mouth. You have to go heavy referral based.
And then what I've also noticed, which I do the inverse of, is like, and this is just me as a personality type, people will zig and I'll zag. That's just, I feel like everyone goes in this direction. And then if you really think about it, it's like, there's actually more of an opportunity in this direction. But for friends, what I've noticed most industries will do is juice their margins because they think it's an exclusive lead. Whereas for me,
crazy. Yeah.
If it's a friend or family, I decrease my margin
100%.
because I don't want them to ever feel like they're not getting the best deal. I also want them to understand, like, hey, I'm doing you a solid as well. Like, you're doing me a solid, I'm doing you a solid. And then number three, I also think that just from a hypothetical standpoint, it's good for referral-based business. I also didn't spend any money on that lead. There's no customer acquisition cost. So I think that when you have this is something I think is important for everybody in sales, is have like a Bible or a playbook that you adhere to, that's yours and you find success with. And one of the things I found success with is, in working with referrals or family members or friends, decrease your margins. Don't juice it. And I'll tell people, hey, I know you're working with a friend. Like, it'll be a lead. I'll call them. They'll pick up the phone. I'm working with my brother. I'll always just say, hey, a second opinion takes absolutely no time. And I'm not saying your brother's not a good guy, but let's just see what the market is. And you'll look at it and you're like, he's raking you over the coals. In fact, I would
Oh,
say that happens more often than not.
yeah.
And what's also very unfortunate, there's certain communities that want to do business within the community, but the problem is they're not doing themselves any service as a consumer because that community is aware that they can have a higher margin. So then what happens is if you were to see a second or third or a fourth opinion, and this is just good mortgage knowledge, literally for anybody, get a second or third opinion just in case. Like, you don't have to tell the previous person you're talking to, but keep everybody honest. Even if it's a brother, even if it's a family member, even if it's the same community, like it's just always a good idea.
Yeah, it brings to light there's a certain marketing strategy that is because you mentioned community. Hey, go and become the leader of the local PTA. Go to the local Rotary Club. Go and do whatever else, right? Like,
Firefighter, police
yeah,
officer, yeah.
100%. Again, I'm just not a fan of that because it feels like, okay, now I have to play 3 chess moves out and first of all do something I don't want to do, right? And but then appear to be something. It feels sleight of hand. Do you know what I mean? Like I've got to go out and be this character so that the community sees me in this certain way, and that so that one day maybe I can convert them to clients. Versus just saying, "Hey, let's flip that whole like marketing formula. Like they've got to know you, like you, and trust you." What I like to say is no, like know you, like you, trust you, and feel that you're competent. But I like to invert that. Show your competency first. And then if they need to get to know you, okay, great. And trust you, outstanding. Do they have to like you? Not necessarily. I don't have to like my
Yeah,
doctor. I've got to know that he
yeah.
can perform the surgery.
Okay, I couldn't agree with you more, and I feel like that's a very common point of I don't want to say contention, but disagreement I have with people is like, I don't care if Shaq and Kobe aren't best friends, but when they're all ooping in Game 7 against the Trailblazers, it
Yep.
seems to work just fine for me. So my whole thing is I don't necessarily have to like someone. It's not even personal. Like I know in life that there are going to be people that like me for me and that aren't going to like me for me. And of course my preference is to be liked, but if somebody doesn't, move right along. No big deal. And I think that that's also true with turning professional. And with the community aspect of it, there are points in time where it does make sense to be like the preeminent source of knowledge for a unique or specific circumstance that other loan officers aren't going to know. So I think that unfortunately, that's not the majority. The majority of people do it to be like the marketing expert. So that at that point in time, they get all that business, not because they know that person's unique situation and trying to get a loan, but because they're identifying with that person and they're not really doing any of the proper vetting in that person. It's just, oh, people know you and I'm going to do business with you. I don't think that's the best way of trying to find a professional.
Yeah, I completely agree. In fact, I feel like I've gotten burned is probably too strong of a word, but I have at times regretted working with either friends or people that I like because then I honestly feel a little bit of pressure. Like I can't hold their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
Like it's a little bit awkward. I'm like, hey man, you're not really giving me the stuff that I need, but then you're going to be at my Thanksgiving dinner, so it gets a little weird. So what do you think about that?
I think you're exactly right. And I sympathize for you because yours is a relationship that lasts a long period of time, where mine is a significantly more transactional. But the lingering effects of a transaction, whether it goes good or bad, will last. So I do understand what you're saying. Like I have done business for friends and family, and I tell them like, hey, I want you to understand, I appreciate the business, but if our friendship ever comes into play, I will choose our friendship every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So I address that because I have had situations where, especially, and you know this, they don't know the full scope of the work that you do.
Yep.
And they'll never be able to understand unless they're sitting in the seat that you're seated in. So you look like the bad guy, but in reality, you're actually fighting like you wouldn't even understand. They wouldn't even understand, and you're getting no credit for it. So yeah, honestly, friends and family, I feel a sense of obligation to do it because I don't want them to get taken advantage of by others. So is it a positive transaction? I would consider it neutral to slightly negative because I do wear a lot of that transaction on my sleeve. Whereas with other individuals, I will always care. I'm always invested in everyone. But because that relationship is only one dimensional, it's a little bit easier to separate. as opposed to when I have a client that we have multiple types of relationships, not just a business relationship.
Yeah. How what is your attitude? I wonder if there's like a heuristic. So as they say, sales is the transfer of emotion. And I would almost say it's a transfer of certainty.
Mm.
So I might have somebody on the team that is not as technically sound at sales, let's say, but is super enthusiastic.
Oh yeah.
And that alone, just go in there with that cheerleader type of energy, and you're going to close a crazy amount of deals. Would you agree with that?
100%. And honestly, like not to make this too much about our relationship, but there's a lot I've learned from sales from you because anytime I speak to you, I'm ready to do business. I'm ready to do what you say. You're like a master motivator, but your technique is very non-salesy. And what I've realized is what you're saying is a lot of times it just requires effort. It
Yeah.
really just requires effort. And it's interesting because you don't have to be super salesman-y to be successful.
I think you and I have an advantage. I don't think about what I do at all as sales, like literally zero. Because I think what you said earlier was spot on. I know that there's other techniques that I don't do that I know would increase conversions, but I will not do them because I'll feel a certain amount of ick from it, and that will decrease my enthusiasm, and I'm just not willing to go there.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I said that was really because of a lesson that I learned from you is like, you got to play a game that you can play for the rest of your life. And if you're
100%.
doing something to maximize profitability at the expense of your own personal joy, which is going to cut your career down, then you're right. And honestly, I've changed my sales tactics a lot. I used to really be persistence beats resistance. And I do believe that to a degree. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. You got to ask for the business. I do believe that. I'll ask for the business 2, 3, 4 times. But what I've realized is sometimes once or twice is just as effective as 3 or 4 times if they're not ready to move that day.
Mm.
So it is interesting how sales can evolve over time, especially by surrounding yourself with people like you. Another thing I think is a very important lesson when it comes to leads, just because this is a lesson you taught me, is having an abundance mindset as
Yep.
opposed to spending money on leads. You're now investing in the growth of your business. Like that sounds very basic, but in your brain, if
Yep.
you say I'm spending money to try to get more leads versus I'm investing to grow my business, the way you go about your day to day, depending on which mind space you're in, will dramatically affect the outcome.
Yeah. Did I ever tell you the story of the little boy in the barbershop?
I love that story. It's worth mentioning.
Yeah, let's say it just so people can hear it. So just pretend you never heard it before.
Yeah.
So there's a barber and he's cutting this guy's hair and he says, "Hey, you see that little boy is about to come in here? We call him the village idiot." And the guy getting his haircut says, "Oh, why?" And he says, "Well, just watch." So the little boy comes in, the barber holds out his hand. He's got a quarter in one hand and a nickel in the other. And he says, "Hey boy, which one do you want today?" And little boy looks at both hands and he takes the nickel and runs out. And the barber says, "That's why he's the village idiot. He always takes the nickel, not the quarter." So the guy who's getting his haircut walks out, and then he sees the little boy across the street, goes over to him and says, "Hey, just so you know, the quarter, the larger one, is worth more money." And the little boy says, "Here, I'll tell you my secret." And he's like, "I know that." He's like, "But if I take the quarter, the game is over." So he takes the nickel every time.
And how
And
many times has he getting that game played?
exactly, right? So playing the game forever, I think is just so unbelievably undervalued. It's almost impossible for me to articulate. The amount of now that I've been in business for, I don't know, let's say 20 years doing this, I have now seen so many peers get in and out of industries and they're constantly restarting. And a lot of these guys and gals, they had the next best thing always. It's like, "Oh, well, this campaign works or this works and this works and this works." But now realizing that every single time they're restarting every handful of years, but if you just stick with the path that you are most intrinsically interested in, then you get that compound effect. And man, it's enormous. Like it is enormous that benefit.
Well, and the thing is, like, I'm a recent convert because I have always felt it's just so invigorating to do something new and reinvent the
Yeah.
wheel. And the reality is if it's like the hub and spoke model, like you had mentioned, if it's something pretty adjacent to where it can plug in easily enough to what you do, then yeah. But you are right, and I found myself falling for that trap.
Mhm.
Is getting too diverse. Is it's stick to a lane and really just go with what you know and being hyper focused. And even if that comes at potentially being monotonous, the reward is worth the monotony.
Yeah, oh, without a doubt. If there's a way that you can scratch the ADD itch within the existing business, way better than jumping ship and going to a different thing.
Exactly. I mean, I've had this conversation with other uh, mortgage brokers. It's like if you get bored, try a different lead source. If you get bored, try something that's a little bit different with what you already do. Because honestly, monotony can, like, variety is the spice of life. But I feel like once you truly understand the importance of sticking to your lane, it's a lot easier to do. And I have to thank you for that lesson because that's a lesson I learned from you.
Oh, no, I had to learn it, from just the multitude of failures that I had, noticing that each time I started something different, my brain just naturally discounted how much effort it was to change.
And that's the thing is you might not necessarily lose money, but how much money did you lose getting away from the core business by taking your time away?
Yep,
And that's something else I don't know that people realize until they've been more in the game for a longer period is that time is actually the ultimate resource, not the
100%.
money. Money really actually just buys time. So like for instance with leads, the other thing is not only are courting people and taking them out to dinner and going to play golf with them, that's time too. So if I can spend my money, which I can earn more quickly, I can't get my time back. And if I can spend money to get more time to convert deals, that's another really, really important fact that people just don't realize. Like your time is money.
Yep, no doubt about it, man. I think there's an element here that if I it's kind of hard to explain. I had a mentor teach me the difference between good money, great money, and best money. And we often think that it's like going from bad to good. That's easy. So that's not even a conversation. Going from good to great is often also easy. It's how do you only select exclusively the best money deals
Mhm.
versus the great money. That's the killer, right? And so foregoing great money to only exclusively focused on best money requires a level of discipline that is like monk like.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And honest, there's a lot of great lessons and I feel like another really good way to spend your time is to find a business coach, which you and
Yep.
I have had this discussion many times. And like, I credit you for helping me, uh, accelerate my journey on the path that I'm on to get there quicker. And I feel like that's kind of one of those things that you're exactly right. And if you don't if you haven't learned that lesson yourself, learning from someone that has who you trust is the best way to spend your dollar, your time, like whatever it is, like learning from someone that has been there, because that's a good point. And I have found myself, and we may have had a similar conversation, but when you put it like that, there are times where I'm like, you know what? I know that this is pretty good, but is there something that I could be doing that is better? And like a lot of times the limiting factor is time.
Yep.
So it's like it does take monk like discipline to get to that level. But how
Yeah.
would you know unless someone instructed you or you've been in the game for 50 years, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's something it's so weird in my head. It's like, "Oh, we could just go and do this thing and we wouldn't really have to change anything." It's actually crazy. In reality, it's almost the opposite. Like
Yeah.
like as an example, if we are about to start onboarding a different avatar in our business, right? A different client with different characteristics. And in my head, it's like, "Oh, we're not gonna have to change much." But then in reality, when we actually start doing it, it's like, no, it's almost a changing down to the atomic level. As an example, for our typical client, we create investment binders. And in those investment binders, we have tabs for the sections of their plan. Well, the new avatar doesn't have those same sections. So now we have to get people to change out those tabs. So it's actually almost the opposite. It's like, no, to what degree does it not impact the operational side of the execution of the business?
Yeah. Well, and that's the dichotomy that I struggle with, because it kind of reminds me to another. I mean, honestly, this is really more of a life lesson, like something you taught me about myself. And on it, you should share it, because I feel like there's a lot of people who can relate to this, is the Wagglebee situation.
Yeah.
At what point is being the Wagglebee going to yield great success, or is it going to be counterproductive because you're just trying to find other avenues?
Yeah, so yeah, it's a great point. So what Rob is referring to is, I believe, something called the waggle dance from typical, I think it's honeybees, where they will have 80% of, I don't know, whatever you call it, like the bee tribe, will go out and do the stereotypical stuff. They've already found the successful flowers that produce the nectar, and they bring it back to the tribe. And they do something called a waggle dance, which is this communication to illustrate those, or like the success of where those flowers are. But apparently 20% do not have to be compliant with that. They are allowed to go rogue. They are allowed to span over whatever surface area they want to go and basically get lucky. They're trying to find opportunity that did not once exist. So I think that ratio is kind of insightful, right? And I think Google did something very similar where, and they probably still do, where I think it's every Friday Google takes time where their engineers can do whatever they want. So there's something magical about like the 10 to 20% ratio of like, hey, once I have my stuff sound and it's functioning properly and we're bringing in revenue from it and we're now putting it on, I don't say autopilot, but we have it streamlined. Are we taking 10 to 20% of our time to explore opportunities that might get us to the next level?
Yeah.
And I think that's important, that ratio.
It's important, and I think that story is important for a lot of different things, because I feel like, me personally, like, I like to zig when people zag. I like to be that waggle bee, or whatever, the bee that can find potentially that greater success. But you can't get too lost in it either, because it has to be a ratio. If it's not 20 to 10% and then 80% is the core business, you can get lost in that potential opportunity for something great. And I really do think now, the more I've spoken with you, the more I've executed what you've taught me, is that a lot of times there's a reason 80% of your time is going to the core business, because the core business is key. So like when you do deviate that 10 to 20%, you have to make sure it's not 30, 40, 50%, because then you're just taking away from yourself. But it is an interesting dynamic. And I've seen older generations where I've seen, like, say, I actually watched a great documentary on Vince McMahon, the wrestler.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
And
I haven't seen it, but I've been wanting to watch it.
It is not about wrestling. It's about business. So it is a must watch. And I had no idea the level of mastery Vince McMahon had in business. Like, he is a self-made billionaire through what I would consider to be, no disrespect, kind of a tacky industry.
Yeah.
So that's the game he chose to play, but good for him. That being said, you could see his father was too invested into the 80% of the core business, and then Vince wanted to do it this way. So that ratio, there is something about that ratio. I tend to probably spend too much time in here and get distracted, have ADD, and want to do those new things. But it is important to have a little bit of your business be dedicated to that potential next Grand Slam.
I think there's an element to be spoken for of not just the ratio, but also the sequence, at least from my experience. So 10 to 20% on rogue activities, opportunistic opportunity or activities, 80% on the core business. Mm-hmm. But in my opinion, that 80% has to be spent first.
100%.
Like, I've got to earn that 10 to 20%. And then also benchmarking it to an actual revenue number. Mm-hmm. I think what happens oftentimes is we give ourselves as humans outs because we don't have a flag in the ground. Like, no, before I go rogue, I'm going to earn that number, or I'm going to do it for this amount of time. And that just makes it more concrete, because especially for guys like you and I who are intrinsically curious, we will start to compromise that number way too early.
That's a problem I can literally attribute that to you for helping me out, because it can be a problem.
Yep.
But it is true. I feel like 100% of your time when you're starting should be invested in the core business, because what ends up happening, and in the case of the B, I think a lot of it is a 20% just chance. I feel like what ends up happening is as you start to understand your industry and master it better, you start to see maybe this avenue is worth inspecting. And like you have foresight to understand which 10% of risk or change you're willing to take because you have a educated understanding that that might yield better results. Whereas the B might just be doing it randomly. After you spent time in your core business, you'll start to see the opportunity, at
Yeah.
least in my case.
No, I completely agree. I also think when I think risk is contextual because I think if you already have a core business and it's bringing in sustainable revenue, you can go and do a risky thing from a probability perspective in that 20% of time, but it's not as capital risky to you because you have cash flow over here.
Yeah.
Versus if you have not sufficiently increased your revenue to where it's sustainable for your lifestyle or whatever it is for the business to survive. Well, now when you go and try that adventurous thing, that thing better work. And
Yeah.
when you go into anything with a sense of desperation, in my opinion, it tends to knock you off your game, or at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, I have made decisions out of desperation and it's worked because there is a certain level of like stress kind of stokes the fire. I've also made terrible decisions being too stressed. I think that that's just business. You're going to make good decisions. You're going to make bad decisions. If you're trying to pitch a perfect game, that's impossible in business. But you bring up another interesting thing about risk, and I'm curious. I actually am very curious to
Yeah.
know because this is a question I think people don't think of risk, but let's just take the example of working on referrals versus buying leads. Do you think if it's been proven that buying leads works, that it's actually riskier not buying leads?
100%.
Yeah. So like risk is an interesting concept in the game of business because some of the riskiest things you can do are not taking the risk at all, the perceived risk at all.
Yep. Yeah, I think the majority of risk is perception, and it
Yeah.
depends on how you frame it, depends on your resources, it depends on your skill sets. But oftentimes we just casually say, "Oh yeah, that's risky," based off of it's if as if it's some absolute value, and it's not. It's all
So
it's all context.
So, not to sing your praise too much, but one of the things that you really helped me do is take something that's super abstract and then make it into little pieces of building blocks that I can build up to where this abstract concept now becomes a reality because I have the tools or the pieces to build up to it. If someone is perceiving buying leads as risky, how would you tell them to go about internalizing that risk to succeed to make sure it ends up not being as risky?
Yeah, well, I think first is doing the proper due diligence to fill in the gray space. So if you sure, and we could just use logic. If you've never done it before, is it more or less risky? More risky if you've never done it before. Okay, great. Well, what's the next best thing? Can you talk to people who have done it before? Okay, you start to quantify these things. Okay, I've talked to 5 different people. They've told me as much as they possibly can. Okay, great. Okay, great. How much does it cost? Okay, relative to your resources, percentage wise, how much is it? And then there's the psychological phrasing. So I had this conversation with somebody recently, and we are looking at hiring another employee. And this one is not as much of a solid bet. Um, and just for you, Arvin, in the background, that's not you. Um, right. And this guy he's got a history in sales, but he's never done it before in our industry. So there's a bit of an unknown there. And I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he said, look, he's like, just consider it that you pay that guy that amount of money for that year and consider the money to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, in just like that little flip, I was like, yeah, I'll just pretend it's gone. So now my baseline expectation is 0. And if anything works out, monetary or not, I'm good because
Yeah.
I've recalibrated the frame in my mind.
See, I feel like you have good contacts and you're naturally very gifted at this. As someone who is more of an abstract thinker, I think that I'm in the vast majority. I would say 95% of people like will say, "What do women want?" "Oh, they want a confident man." And then you ask, "Well, what is confidence?" The same can be true for business, right?
Yep.
And I think the reality is at some point in your life, you should really make a decision matrix or a playbook or some sort of, because what happens is if you're abstract and then you get into the minutia, you start to see the importance of the
Yep.
minutia. But it's almost like for me, math. I can be in a math class and see the teacher do it, and I'm like, it makes so much sense. And then when I'm on my own, it's like I have nothing to reference outside of repetition because I'm fortunate enough to have access to you. And like, I'll call you when I have a decision I need to be made. And you really, really do help me make that decision. But I do think that at some point in time, the way you're able to break down a complex abstract problem into like the actual building blocks, there should be some sort of decision matrix or playbook, or I would love to have it for any of my employees or loan officers.
Well, thank you for the compliment. And to your point, um, decision matrices are so important, right? And for those of you who are not, users of decision matrices, when you make a decision matrix, it's super rational. Okay, I'm about to make this decision. Let's say you're going to buy a car. Okay, what specific attributes am I looking for? Because most people are like, yeah, I like that car.
Mhm.
Well, okay, that's fine, but why? And
Mhm.
this sounds so obvious, but when you actually do it, and it's okay. I like the pink color. I like the 0 to 60. I like the interior. I don't actually, now that you say it, I don't like the exterior as much. Okay, great. So now you have these, let's say, 10 attributes, and what I like to do is then weight them, right? So on a scale of 0 to 10, right? How important is that attribute?
Mhm.
Then on the next column, on a scale of 0 to 10, where does it score
Mhm.
in that attribute? And this sounds so elementary, but man, when you go through the process, you're like, oh, you really refine what you want. And what's even better about that is that you don't have to go down the roads where you don't want.
Yeah.
And I also, as like a little cheat code on this, I also like to have a veto attribute.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And that I have found to be um, unreasonably useful for me
Mhm.
because after you build the whole decision matrix, I do like to have a veto button. And that helps for nerds like me, probably you as well, to at the end of the day saying, hey, this math doesn't make sense, but I just want the car because I want the car.
Mhm.
And for some reason, having that veto attribute there, like allows me to be okay with it. I've done all the math. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to analyze my pleasures. I'm going to do this thing anyway.
There is something to be said about making a decision based on just feeling it in your bones or wanting it.
Mm.
That matters a lot. I just think that that's potentially what too many people do.
Yes.
And what's crazy to me, man, is the car analogy is perfect because it can be a decision as little as buying a car. I've seen people buy cars and regret it a month later.
100%.
And I'm like, well, why did you buy that car?
Yeah.
It
What's
looked
the
cool.
surprise?
Yeah.
Why are you surprised on this?
And
Yeah.
it's like, it took me personally, because I do spend a lot of, I personally feel that there effort is always going to be important with business. The same thing with sales. I think you can succeed in business as long as you have the effort. If you don't have the requisite effort, don't even try. Like,
Yep.
just it's not for you. Perception that the world's out to get them, but I actually notice a lot of poor decisions being made, and it's not personal. It's just that decisions are a very big part of the game of life, and having a system to utilize to make sure you're doing a good decision, or even having people like I kind of lean on you and other people in my life, but I don't think people have that. And then sometimes it's like, if they did have like a handbook or like a rubric or a matrix to look into, I think that could really be significantly more beneficial than a self-help book.
Yeah, I agree. I also think there's a lot of reality distortion that happens with most people. I mean, most people say, "Oh, yeah, I just make decisions by my gut." And it's like, well, that's funny because I've noticed you're a terrible decision
Yeah,
maker.
yeah. And the thing that sucks is you can't necessarily call them out. And I'm a little bit more forward than most people, and I'll do it politely, but they still can't even take that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I like business because it's like, okay, now we're on the court. You can say that about other areas of life. Okay, you go by your intuition. Let's not draw attention to the fact that you're divorced 3 times over. Like, but that's fine. It doesn't matter as much,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
right. But when you're on the court of business, and if your goal, like my goal is to change my family tree, so I need to be as objective as possible. So saying things like, "Oh, I just make decisions by my gut," and if that's not actually working, it will show up in the numbers.
Yeah.
So we now have objective proof that, "Oh, Wes, you're just not good at that."
Mhm.
Right? So I need tools to be able to compensate. And then actually we can measure because if you actually do want to make progress in an area, I think it's so important to measure it. And too many people just think they're making the right decisions when they're actually not, but they don't have the feedback mechanisms to show them the reconciliation.
Yes. And I think a lot of that comes to surrounding yourself with people that you can trust to be honest with you. Like, you and I had a pretty profound conversation one time that I have utilized every single day from this point forward in my life. Is I want to be surrounded with people that understand they can be 100% honest with me, whether it's something they want to say about me, whether it's they want to say something about them. But if I am making a bad decision, and it's something that I have a blind eye to. I want to be surrounded by people that will check me. I don't want a yes person. I don't want someone to tell me that's a good idea. Like I feel like whether it's a rubric or people or whatever it is, if there's a big decision, I think you utilize it all.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, whether it be from what college you're going to go to what business deal you're going to do, to what partners you're going to onboard.
Yeah.
Um, it's so funny, man. I think oftentimes, and I've been guilty of this as well, I'll ask people and say, like, hey, have you thought about this? And they say, yeah. I say, okay, cool, show me. I'm like, what do you mean show me? It's like, show me your journal that shows that you've actually written through your thoughts. 99% of the time they haven't. Right. And then the reality is it's like, oh, you just haven't done the work. That's it. Like you haven't taken the hour that it takes, locking yourself in a room, journaling on this thing, developing a decision matrix, and using other tools. You would have had the answer by now. But instead, you've lightly dabbled in the exploration of it for 4 months
That
versus
comes
an hour of concentration.
and that's a big of the effort component. It's like decisions take effort too.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. Well, hey, brother, as always, we could talk for 15 hours straight. I'll have to have
100%.
you on again. This has been outstanding. Any final words of wisdom?
I mean, honestly, I think that a lot of the success, I mean, we'll end it with basically what we were talking about is surrounding yourself with good people. I really appreciate you being in my life, man. Like you really helped me out. You've helped my family out with personal matters, but also from the investment side.
Thank
And
you, man.
I just really appreciate you giving me the opportunity and thank you for everything that you do, bro.
Hey, right back at you, buddy. This has been super insightful. As always, you helped me a ton during our conversation. So, man, pleasure to have you on. We'll have you on again.